anonymousretailer.com.
So if we're sitting in a room with a room full of retailers, and they think they have their head around SEO, they're running Google ads, they understand search traffic.
Yep.
And now we're telling them that the game is changing again. How do we tell them that without them just tuning out? Because I feel this is some space that people need to start understanding.
I agree. I think much like before, I'm sure in that same time period when Google was taking off and people were like, yeah, but I'm paying $800 in my newspaper and getting traffic through my front door. It's doing the same thing again. And so those retailers are going to have to listen and pay attention and want to make those changes, but they get ahead of the curve and act now. So Google's model, just crawling the web, indexing pages and ranking them, LLMs are going to work differently in the same space. So we're going to need to follow that model. And I think a lot of retailers are going to be like fatigued and annoyed at another change, but I think that's just the nature of doing business, is getting ahead of that curve, following that trend and trying to get there before everybody else in a big box state does. So specialty retailers, I think specifically, are targeted in a really good position for that. So making sure you're following that trend and getting ahead of the curve and like learning what you need to learn now in order to be the most relevant in a year.
Yeah. And I think that's what's advantageous here that we'll probably touch on here a little bit as this conversation evolves, is that that I hope that people understand and take away from this conversation is that this new environment that's coming out, if you understand it, it's highly advantageous for the independent. Somebody who can, have a blog out there, who has control of their Instagram, who's making video content, who has control over their website and can create and unify all this content together to come together as like one voice of continuity. So let's talk about the actual difference here. What are LLMs doing that's fundamentally different from the way Google index pages, ranks links, and sends traffic to your website?
Absolutely. I think, touching on what you just said, retailers in the past have figured out how Google works, and you're paying for that, and that's what you're doing. So you're looking at the ways to optimize Google, crawling the web, they index pages, they rank pages based on links, keywords, authority, and they send traffic, right? So you're buying traffic to that thing, or Google is sending organic. So an LLM is going to work totally different than that. It's going to use that as a piece of the puzzle, but it's looking at natural language. It's AI's interpreting what you're asking, not just the keywords you're putting on the page. It's searching for relevant information across multiple sources, and then it cross-references all of those. That's the hard part. We can get into more detail on that. It assembles an answer in line right there within a chat thread. So I did this over the weekend. I was looking for like a random part for a washing machine, took a picture of it, threw it into ChatGPT specifically and said, I need to identify what this thing is. And it's giving me answers on the spot and links to sources to go buy that item. So it's looking across web to find these multiple sources and pull in line to give me a response. Way different than Google, that's just a single page website authority by somebody who's paid for backlinks in the past.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. It's a hefty shift.